You'll hear from Tisha and Zoe, our expert team of assessors who work on the different ways of upgrading, and they will outline how those work and which of them might be right for you. And then in the second half of the session, we'll bring in our panel of CIPD members, Krishnan, Linda, Peter, and Ruth, who have all been through the process to share their experiences of it and to help answer your questions. So please do make use of that Q&A feature to post your questions through the session, and we'll make sure that we pick up on as many of those as we can before we finish at 1 o'clock, which is when we will close. Before I do hand over to the team, a quick word about why all of this is so important. Your membership is above all an indication of the level of knowledge and impact you bring to a role or to a client. The team will explain how our membership grades are each linked to a set of standards for that very purpose. Being in the right membership grade opens up new opportunities. There are senior roles available only to those who are in chartered membership or chartered grades, and those roles pay on average more than those open to any applicant. Above that, carrying chartered status offers assurance to your senior stakeholders or your clients that you can operate at a strategic level. We believe that a profession that's built on the foundation of shared standards works in everyone's interests. Employers, their people, and professionals themselves all benefit from that. And to take full advantage of that, it's really important that you're in a grade that reflects your current level of practice. The offers that we've been running this year, that you'll hear a bit more about during the session, they're all about trying to provide opportunities for you to do just that. And hopefully the experiences of some of our members who've been through that will provide some reassurance about what the process is like. So after the call, please do run through the self-assessment tools the team will direct you towards during the session, and think seriously about whether this is the year to take that next step. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Zoe and to Tisha.
Perfect, thank you. And great to see so many people joining, and still the number rises. So really good to see the level of interest. So my name is Zoe Ryan. I head up membership assessment here at CIPD. In my role, I oversee our routes to membership. You'll hear us talking about routes to membership. It might be experience assessment, it might be upgrading. We'll try and clarify all of that for you. But before I worked at CIPD, I worked in operational HR. The joys of leading on restructures, site closures, doing big recruitment campaigns. So know what it's like to be on the front line, I suppose. Tisha, one of the assessors joining on the call today, also worked in HR. So I guess we know that those of you working in HR are always really good at supporting the development of others, often overlook your own CPD, or it falls to the bottom of the list because somebody else just asked to borrow 5 minutes of your time. We also know that some people put off professional accreditation because of the fear of failure, or they perceive it as onerous. Or sometimes you're confused by the phrasing such as CIPD qualified or unsure about professional grades. I say all of that because we hear it day in, day out, and what we're trying to do in this webinar today is really try and demystify that for you. I think over the last couple of years, what we've done as well is we've spent quite a bit of time and investment trying to refine and streamline our assessment routes. And it's all about helping you unlock your full potential. Often, I mean, it goes without saying, you don't know what you don't know. The whole going through the assessment or using our membership standards is about highlighting what you could and should be doing differently to be more effective in your role. What we've done over the last few years is try to develop some free online tools to support you through your journey. Often I think I've started from a point of, I wish I'd had these when I was in HR. So I'm hoping that through the call, you'll find some of these of value. So if we move on to the next slide, What we've really wanted to start off with is talking you through the profession map. Some of you more familiar with CIPD will know the profession map. I know we've got a range of different experience on the call. The profession map is I suppose it sets out the international standards for people professionals. So we built it using robust external research through consultation with thousands of people professionals. And we really wanted to understand, drill down, what does an effective people professional need to know, do, and how should they behave to get the most out of their day-to-day work. The profession map is free to access on our website, and you can use it to help inform your decision making. You can, we kind of refer to it, I don't know if it's an umbrella, some people talk about it, a lady with a wig, but depending on the different colour elements or depending on how you refer it, you can click on the different sections and it will break it down and give you more details. And I'd encourage you to play around with that. But just to reinforce, the map is at the heart of everything we do at CIPD to help drive the people profession forward. Then if we move on, what we did was we looked at the profession map, and you'll see as on the slide here that we then have 4 distinct professional grades, starting at foundation member, associate member, chartered member, and chartered fellow. And underneath each of the membership grades, there's a description there clarifying the expectations, the ways of working, what we typically expect to see. Again, lots more information on the website, but there's a kind of brief summary underneath each. So the starting point, I suppose, is for really you to try and identify which membership grade is right for you. And it's worth saying that it's not linear progression. There isn't a requirement to start at foundation, move to associate, then chartered member, then chartered fellow. We want you to come in at the membership grade that best aligns with the level of work and knowledge that you have. So what we have done, and we'll show you on the next slide, is how you can use the membership standards to really support your own development. So on the right hand side, what you'll see is one of the ways that we've used the profession map is we've broken down. There's lots of knowledge and lots of detail on there, but what we drilled down is there was some core knowledge and behaviours, irrespective of what sector, what level you're working, that you needed to know. So what we've used then is we've built these to support our membership levels. And fundamentally, we believe that if you use and work to the membership standards, you will achieve your full potential. So we'd encourage you to have a look at the membership standards, critically reflect, what are you actually doing within your role? Are you able to tick everything off? If not, reflect on, could you be doing things differently to be more effective? On the left-hand side, what you'll see is a pre-assessment. What we felt was we've got lots of tools detailing expectations of membership standards, but we wanted to give you all an interactive tool so that you can play around and work out, are you ready for membership yet? If so, which level of membership is right for you? So what we'd encourage you to do with the tool, it's really for you to critically reflect. Can you answer yes or no to each of the questions? If you can, it probably means that you've got that breadth of work experience that will give you the evidence you need to apply for that level of membership. If there are gaps against, or you feel that you can't honestly say yes, ask yourself, should you? Is there something you should be doing differently in your role? Or actually it's a good starting point to speak to your manager and consider how you can get those opportunities. So we've got some tools which we'll share with you at the end of the session. But this webinar is all about Chartered. So I thought I'd talk through actually the routes to Chartered. And moving forward, what you'll see on the next slide is there are different routes to gain Chartered member, and it really depends on your qualification history and your career history. And when I talk about Chartered, as you've seen on the previous slides, we've got 2 grades of Chartered, either Chartered member or Chartered fellow. And what you'll see here is the routes may vary to how you get there, but fundamentally, when you're awarded Chartered member or Chartered fellow, you need to show the same level of knowledge and experience. So it's not that one way is easier than the other. It's just you need to find a route that's right for you. So you'll see we've got 2 routes. Effectively at bottom left, it's called upgrading assessment. Bottom right, it's called experience assessment. So to be eligible for our upgrading assessment route, you need to either be an existing Chartered member, or you will have studied a level 7 qualification. And having achieved either Chartered member or level 7, it means we've already tested your knowledge through either your studies or your previous assessment. So the upgrading assessment is a more streamlined version of the top up, if you like, of the difference. And we're looking about how you've applied that learning within the workplace and looking at the impact that you've had. If neither of those apply to you, then we have experience assessment. So as experience assessment is a direct entry route. It doesn't involve any qualifications. And what you'll be asked to do is provide a few more examples, really, so that we can understand the breadth of your role. So that's experience assessment is the route for you if you've never been in membership before, but you've got work-based experience that you want us to validate. Or if you've studied a level 3 or a level 5 qualification with us, we will have, if you like, tested some of your knowledge. We need to do a kind of broader assessment just to validate the broader experience that you've got. So those are our routes to Chartered, and we will send out this all to you at the end of the webinar, just so that you have time to really look and think about which option is right. But what I'll do now is hand over to Tisha, who is one of our assessors in the team. What Tisha can do is demystify, I guess, what Chartered looks like and how you might want to prepare to get the best out of the assessment. So Tisha, I'll hand over to you at this point.
Great, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Zoe. Hello, everyone. As Zoe said, we're going to focus today on those routes into professional membership with us that are based on your experience. So our experience assessment route and our upgrading assessment route. Broadly then, both these routes are strengths-based and practically focused. So we're looking at how you drive impact and change in your organizations. There's no new learning involved. There's no studying involved. This is 100% based on your experience and expertise and what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. Our experience assessment route uses a holistic approach, which includes a written submission and a professional discussion with an assessor like myself. There's 3 membership levels you can apply for via experience assessment: associate member, Chartered member, or Chartered fellow. Our upgrading assessment route is a 1-hour professional discussion with no written submissions, and you can upgrade to either Chartered member or Chartered fellow membership. Let's take a look at what each of these routes involve. So, starting with our experience assessment route. The first step, as Zoe talked about, is to complete the pre-assessment tool, which you'll find on our website, which is a reflective tool and will help you to understand the requirements of the assessment and judge whether you're right to take it now or possibly sometime in the future. Once you've received a successful outcome confirmation, you'll be able to register for experience assessment. You have 4 weeks to complete a written submission, which will cover how you've applied your knowledge to create impact and what learning experiences you've had and how you're applying that learning. After you've submitted that document, you can then book your professional discussion, which is conducted using Microsoft Teams. The professional discussion happens 3 to 4 weeks later and is a supportive, strengths-based conversation exploring how you're applying your knowledge and skills to help your organizations. The discussion will last between 1.5 to 2 hours, following which you'll receive your results within 4 weeks. So that's experience assessment. Let's move on to our upgrading assessment route. As with experience assessment, for upgrading, you'll need to complete the pre-assessment tool on the CIPD website. And once you receive your eligibility confirmation from us, you can then book your assessment. For Chartered membership, you can choose between a professional discussion that's done via Microsoft Teams or a written assessment. For Chartered Fellow, it will be a video professional discussion. The professional discussion itself is a 60-minute conversation with an assessor exploring your experience against those membership standards. And as with experience assessment, it will be strengths-based and a supportive conversation aimed at how you're applying your skills and experience. Following the professional discussion, you'll then receive your result within 10 working days. So that's a bit about what to expect from each route. Let's move on to how best to prepare for that professional discussion. So before the assessment, I'd really recommend spending some time reflecting on the examples that you'd like to share. As a starting point, think about the key people and change initiatives that you've led over the last 5 years. Which ones were the most successful and why? How do they help the business? Reflecting on these sorts of questions will help you pull together a strong set of examples to discuss with your assessor. And we'd recommend that you have at least one example from each of these areas: work, people, change, capability, and impact. These areas will be common across both Chartered Member and Chartered Fellow professional discussions. At Chartered Member level, we'll be looking for examples of your work that demonstrate strategic thinking and doing, how you work with and influence your stakeholders in the organisation, and how your work demonstrates value in the medium to long term, so value that's sustained over 12 months. At Chartered Fellow level, we'll be looking for examples of your work that demonstrate significant strategic complexity, how you work with and influence senior stakeholders across the business to really shape the way organisations think about its people, and how your work demonstrates value in the long term, so value that's been sustained over a number of years. There are many possible examples you could choose, and to give you a sense of the difference between the two levels, at Chartered Fellow level, a typical example might be the creation and implementation of a talent development and performance strategy across an organisation. At Chartered Member level, a typical example might be about leading one of those key initiatives that supports that wider strategy. So, for example, the new performance approach. What's most important is having examples that really showcase your ability to think strategically, drive change, and create value for your organisation or those organisations that you work closely with. The value of your work is a really key focus area in the professional discussion. So this next slide goes into a bit more depth about what we mean when we talk about impact. A core theme of our work as people professionals is delivering positive change through our work. So at CIPD, we sometimes refer to this as it's not the what, but the so what of your work. And demonstrating this so what is a key theme of the professional discussion. So reflecting on those people and change initiatives that you've led, think about how your solutions met the needs of different stakeholder groups. What was the positive change and how did you know that your work was successful? The timescales of impact differ according to the level of membership you're going for. At chartered member level, the timescales for demonstrating impact are between the medium to the long term, so value that's sustained over 12 months. And at chartered fellow, the timescales for demonstrating impact is over the long term, so value that's been sustained over a number of years. Which means for each of your people in change initiatives, tell us a bit about what it was, so what actions you took, what the output was, so the new approach, and the impact, so what the initiative allowed you to do differently. And you can demonstrate the impact in two ways. Firstly, by using data and metrics, which show the measurable value of the change. So things like productivity measures or absence data or engagement survey results, for example. Other evidence you may have may not include explicit data or metrics, but still demonstrates that change has taken place. So we call this qualitative evidence. So examples of this could be things like feedback from your stakeholders or from focus groups, positive cultural change, etc. So spend some time pulling this information together beforehand and make sure to select examples that you've implemented and evaluated. Doing this will ensure that you set yourself up to have a really positive and rich professional discussion. Before we close, I'd like to share some further practical steps you can take to help prepare for your assessment. So firstly, as we've talked about, take the pre-assessment tool, which will help you evaluate your current skills and knowledge. Reflect on your career journey, focusing on your key achievements and learning experiences. Collect examples of your work that demonstrates the value of your work. Engage with your peers. Join the EA community online in the CIPD to connect with peers and also get support from others who are going through the process. Ask colleagues and mentors for feedback and their perspective on your work. And stay positive and seek support. Some people may feel a sense of apprehension coming to the assessment, and our role as assessors is to ensure that we support you and give you the best opportunity to showcase your experience and expertise. There's no hidden agenda, there are no tricks. The professional discussion is all about you and how you're applying your expertise. There are lots of resources that you can make use of on our website that can help, video guides, candidate guidance documents, for example. And in particular, we're very supportive of candidates who may need reasonable adjustments and will work with you to support you through the assessment. So please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. I'll pass you back to Zoe, who's going to close with a few words on our current offers.
Thank you, Tisha. So what I thought I'd share on the final slide, I guess here what we know is that often it's easy to put off doing something. So we wanted to incentivize you all to kind of update and refresh your membership grade. So we are offering free upgrades to anybody who books their assessment on or before the 28th of February this year. Tisha's talked to you about the upgrade assessment, a reminder that you need to have completed the level 7 qualification or be an existing chartered member. It's free, saving you up to about £250 depending on membership grade. Interestingly, we've been running the campaign for a while now, and we're seeing that lots of chartered members are ready to take that jump. We'd love to think that through the webinar, we can really help those of you at the associate grade really have that level of confidence to make that jump too. But as I say, we've extended the campaign. We knew we were doing the engagement event today, so we want you to all be able to make use of that. Alternatively, what we're doing is we're offering 25% off our experience assessment route, potentially saving you up to £594 on that route. And again, there's a call to action because we know that sometimes it's easier not to do something. So we've set a qualifying date range there that you need to register by the 31st of March. A reminder, though, to really use the pre-assessment tools as a starting point. That will help you understand if you're operating at the right level. If you're booking an upgrade assessment and it's free, hopefully that takes away that fear of failure in terms of the financial risk. So we do get questions sometimes, people concerned about what happens if they're not successful first time round. I think we have really high pass rates because we do the pre-screening, the pre-assessment, but with experience assessment, you actually, within the price point, have an opportunity to retake your assessment there. So we are very much wanting to set you up for success through this. And one final thought from me, as if the offers weren't enough to nudge you through. On the last slide, what I've done is uploaded a graph, and basically this is from independent research by Lightcast, and it's effectively showing the difference in salary expectations from those jobs that were advertised needing chartered members or without. We've got some different examples on the slide there, but if I just kind of read out there that candidates who were chartered members could achieve up to 37% more, but on average it was about 28% more. And that's really because, you know, working towards chartered member status, using the tools, using the profession map really enables you, encourages you to achieve that, your full potential, make sure you have the best possible impact, and therefore allows you to earn your full potential too. So I can see there are a number of questions there. Ollie, I'm mindful of time, so I don't know whether you want to ask us some questions now or whether you want us to respond to some in the chat.
Definitely respond to what you can in the chat. I think we'll come to our panel of members next, but I will. We will make sure we get through as many of these questions as we can at the end of the session. We'll be replying to them on the chat as well. And if you don't get an answer to your question today and you still have one, then of course contact our customer services team. They'll be only too happy to help you as well. Thanks, Zoe. Thanks, Tisha, for the really clear outline of how our membership assessments work. Let's now talk to some people who've been through those assessments. I'm initially going to come to each of you on the panel to ask you a little bit about your background in the profession, the role you do now, and the way you either upgraded or came into membership through these assessment processes. Linda, if I can come to you first with that question, would that be okay?
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Linda Derrick. I've been in HR for roughly 25 years, mostly in generalist positions. My most recent role, my current employer, I'm with SSEN Transmission. So we're responsible for delivering the network to deliver net zero. So all of the renewable energy, bringing that onshore to the demand centres. So mostly employed in generalist positions. In November 2024, I pulled my finger out and decided to go for my Chartered Fellow. And I was delighted when I successfully came through that process via the assessment route.
Thanks so much, Linda. And Christian, if I could come to you with the same question, please.
Sure. Hi, hello, everyone. I've been part of the corporate world in India for around 20 years. Right now, of course, based in the UK. So I am a consultant, right? And I consult with companies across Europe, India, Singapore, as well as the UK, right? In different areas of HR, leadership development, etc. For me, as I moved, from a corporate to a self-employed consultant route, I think one of the things that attracted me was to take up the CIPD certifications. And in the month of September, I got into it, and I did the experience assessment route. And I mean, I was quite delighted when I got certified as a Chartered Fellow. So that was my experience. Yeah.
Lovely. Thanks so much. And Peter, same question to you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Pete Trussell, and I'm the Senior Strategic Workforce Planning and Talent Lead at the UK Space Agency, which is a civil service organisation responsible for boosting UK prosperity in space, understanding our universe, and protecting our planet and outer space. So space HR. before I joined the UK Space Agency, I held a number of HR and L&D positions, initially at Rolls-Royce PLC before joining the Cabinet Office. My route to upgrading was that I completed my advanced level 7 diploma in strategic people management in 2022, and then completed an upgrading assessment to achieve chartered member status in January 2025 of this year, so as recently as last month. My experience of the upgrading assessment was a very positive one, particularly for someone who actually made a deliberate decision to step outside of the HR profession back in 2023. So this was actually combined with me rejoining the profession and achieving chartered membership status roughly around the same time. So yeah, it's nice to come back into the fold.
Thanks, Pete. Really appreciate your time today. And last but not least, Ruth. I think you're on mute, Ruth.
Sorry, just realised I was on mute. Thank you, Ollie, and hello, everyone. My name is Ruth George. I'm an independent HR consultant now and have been for the last 13 years, but it's actually my 30th year in HR. So prior to becoming a consultant, I worked for several different organisations, including Next, Fujitsu, Seiko, Gallagher Insurance Brokers in the city, and did lots of European and international work as part of those in-house roles. I actually upgraded to chartered membership many moons ago when I was in-house, so nearly well over 15 years ago, nearly 20 years ago, but I only upgraded to fellow a couple of months ago. And so it was one of those things that I just didn't get round to doing and wished I had done it a lot sooner. And I think in the 13 years I've been a consultant, probably hesitated because I was now a consultant and not in-house. But I know we're going to come to that as part of the discussion. So I'll finish there for the moment.
Thanks, Ruth. Appreciate that. Okay, so there'll be lots of people on the webinar today thinking about whether or not this is the right process for them, this is the right time for them. Help for them to understand a little bit about what you would have really liked to have known before you embarked on your upgrade or experience assessment process. So let me come to each of you in turn and ask for that and any tips you have for people on the call today. Linda, can I come to you first on that, please?
Yeah, sure, Ollie, thanks. Probably a little bit just echoing something Ruth's just said there. I'd put this off for quite a long time, and I wish I'd realised how straightforward the experience assessment process was going to be, and that there was a wealth of resources online which would help me in my preparation for my call. So I think that's probably the thing I wish I'd known, how straightforward and how much support there was available in preparation for the assessment.
Thanks, Linda. Krishnan, same question to you.
Yeah, so for me, of course, this was like a completely new experience, right? I think what really stood out for me was it was quite an enjoyable experience, right? Reflecting on the last 5 years and really reflecting on your experience and what impact you've made. So that's something which, if people had told me, maybe I'd have taken the plunge maybe a couple of years earlier, right? That was one. The other piece, which is I think quite important, is that there's a lot of emphasis on impact. I think that's what Tisha also touched upon, right? And therefore, really being clear what it is that you need to kind of put out there in terms of data, quantitative, qualitative. I think that's something which, people who are interested for experience assessment should watch out for. Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you so much. And Pete, same question to you.
Thank you. So my advice to anyone considering an upgrading or an experience assessment would be to try and enjoy the experience of reflecting on your career so far and the opportunities that you've had. And yeah, I think someone's put in the chat that they're going through it at the moment and they're enjoying it, because actually getting the opportunity to show to yourself where you've had an impact is a very rewarding experience, even without the outcome of achieving the upgrade itself, even if you're unsuccessful. And I think for myself, as someone who, as I say, rejoined the profession in summer 2024, I'd also say if you've had a little bit more of a squiggly career or a circuitous route into the profession, then lean into those experiences too, because they do make you a more rounded HR professional. And also for those of you who have really specialized in a HR function, who've really gone down the specialist route, then feel at ease that my experience of the assessment was one where it was quite well tailored to the experiences I've had, and there was opportunities for me to demonstrate particularly the learning and development specialism that I've built over those who have a more generalist background as well. So don't fret if you're a reward specialist that this isn't going to be for you either. That's not the case.
Thanks, Pete. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I could see we've had questions from those types of specialists coming through in the Q&A and on the chat. I'm sure people will find that reassuring. Ruth, same question to you, and I guess following on from Pete's point, the experience of going through the process as an independent consultant as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think lots of the points I was going to say have been covered already. I think sometimes people hesitate if they're a consultant, particularly because part of the evidence you need to provide is about long-term strategic impact. And as consultants, we're often going in to do projects. They're sort of ring-fence, succinct projects, and then you're coming out again and going off to another client and doing that. But actually, that's been factored in the assessment process. So as a consultant, if there's anyone out there on the call that's an independent and worried about that, I'd say don't be. And I'd just echo what others have said, which is actually, this isn't a job interview. You know, it's not that sort of a scenario. It's an assessment interview. Who doesn't like to talk about themselves for an hour? And how often do you get the opportunity, someone that actually listens? I mean, I try and do that with my husband. He switches off within a few seconds. So there's somebody there on the other end of the screen that actively wants to listen and ask you about your experience and your skills. And it is, as everyone's already said, actually an enjoyable experience. It's not like it's an exam or a job interview scenario. It's different to that.
Lovely. Thanks so much, Ruth. Zoe, can I come to you on one of the points that we've just raised here and has also come up quite a bit in the Q&A, which is around the extent to which we tailor the assessments around somebody's specific role in the profession, particularly whether that's a specialist or generalist role?
Yes, and I realise, you know, I'm conscious some of the chat people reference to L&D, OD. We talk about HR in the very general sense. What we found through the research doing the profession map is there's some core knowledge and core criteria, core behaviours, irrespective of your specialist knowledge. So we'll ask you specific questions to draw out some insight, but the assessor's very much tailored depending on the sector you're working, the expectations. There was a question if you're still working in the company, if you're not, they will adapt. You know, I think we recognise that people move on, they might be applying after they've left an organisation. So it might be that you started a project, you can talk about what your hopes and aspirations and the intent behind that project were. You might not necessarily have the full metrics and data, but what we're really trying to drill down is that level of thinking, understanding how you approached a business situation, the kind of external influence that defined your approach. So I think it is very much open to any sector, any specialism. Irrespective of that, there will be some core fundamental knowledge in terms of how to drive change, for example, and we make that clear up front in the criteria. So I would hope that people won't see that as a reason not to apply. And actually what's lovely to hear from Linda, Peter, Krishna, Ruth, we hear it again and again, actually going through the assessment. It's about removing that imposter syndrome, allowing you to really reflect what you've achieved, where you want to go to, and just taking time to step back. It's a cathartic but a developmental process, just doing that even before you come through the assessment. and then actually to have that credibility that your professional body have kind of looked at what you've done, validated, and actually said, yes, you're doing well in your job. Actually, what we hear from businesses we work with, actually the difference in the approach of an individual who suddenly has that recognition, they're a lot more confident, proactive, feel enabled to push ahead with drive. So a long response, Ollie, to a short question, but hopefully that helps.
That's an important question, though, Zoe, that lots of people are asking. I want to bring to life a little bit for people the types of evidence that they might draw upon in order to fulfill the needs of the assessment. Let me do that with you first, Pete, because you've been through the associate to chartered route quite recently. What sorts of things did you draw upon in order to provide the assessor with what they needed?
Thank you. So I looked at the guidance issued in advance of the assessment, and one of the things I would say, another piece of advice is this is a team sport at times. Our career development is a team sport. Having those around you, colleagues, previous colleagues, mentors who can show you the impact you had where you are sometimes blind to it yourself is really useful. So I re-engaged with a previous HR mentor to support me in identifying the value I'd driven through the activities I'd completed in previous roles. So I'd say evidence of impact. For me personally, in the civil service, we really prioritize evaluation and data to justify and evidence that. So if you've had delivered a particular project that drove down turnover rates, provide the evidence. If you delivered a talent development program that increased opportunities for staff to go for promotion, provide the evidence. Look for the numbers that justify the impact you've had. Maybe it's cost efficiencies in recruitment processes. Maybe it's cost efficiencies in your learning and development budget. These are things that have a real impact on a business and your organization that I think the assessors really appreciate if you can give them something tangible. So that would be my answer to that one.
Thanks, Pete. That's appreciated. Krishna, let me come to you with the same question, because obviously you went through experience assessment. That's a more exhaustive process. The requirement to slightly more testing in terms of evidence there. How did you find that, and what sorts of evidence were you able to pull together?
Yeah. So I think, like you rightly said, right, it's a very reflective process, right? You just need to take time out, just think through the myriad of experiences that you have had, right? What I definitely did was to look at, because there are 3 categories about change, about work, about people, that helps you structure your thoughts a lot better. I reached across to a couple of my colleagues from my previous organization. I reached across to a client whom I am currently engaging with, right? So I think some of those conversations really helped me kind of focus, the experiences that I wanted to talk about. I think that was one thing which was important. And I also realized that as I went through the process, I had to sit on it every day for an hour. And then maybe by the 4th week, some experiences changed, right? Which was okay, right? That's the whole process of, trying to understand. So that's, I mean, those conversations helped, allowing yourself to revisit some of the experiences helped, right? So those are a couple of things that really, made a difference as I went into those, questions.
Thank you, Krishna. I can see a good question from Lisa on the chat around, if maybe now's not the time for you to undertake one of these assessments, is it still worth starting to collate some of that evidence and reflection that you've talked about, Pete and Krishna? And I think we'd absolutely say it is. Not only that, you can make use of the CPD record tool in the CIPD Learning Hub to start collating those sorts of records of your learning and your experience as you've been in practice. Definitely don't wait to do it, but also don't assume it's definitely not the right time for you. Those self-assessments are there to help you, pre-assessments are there to help you know whether or not now might be the right time to take that step. So don't make that assumption without at least first running through those and make sure you get the links to those at the end of the session. Okay, Zoe, I want to pick up on a couple of questions about qualifications. People are asking for clarification on which qualifications would mean that you're looking to take the upgrade assessment route and which ones would still leave you needing experience assessment.
Okay, so it's the advanced level 7 diploma enables you to do the upgrading route, and that is because it's the most complex and covers all elements of the profession map. Those of you who haven't completed that qualification should go through the experience assessment route. Often people aren't even sure what qualification they did because it was a number of years ago. If that's you, we've put some links within the chat there to start different tools, and there will be a way for the team to validate your qualifications. So if you're unsure, you can start the upgrade pre-assessment tool. The team will validate it and come back and let you know, yes, based on your qualification history, this is the right route for you. Actually, or no, actually, it's experience assessment for you.
Lovely, thank you so much. I've got quite a few people asking about the date range for the experience that you can bring into the assessment. Tisha, perhaps let me come to you on this one. So from how far back can people bring evidence in, and is there any flexibility around that?
Yeah, so predominantly we'll focus on the last 5 years of your career experience. So and there is flexibility around that for protected characteristics reasons. So you know, maternity, paternity, and all the ones, and also caring responsibilities as well. So again, if you think that applies to you, please drop us a note, and we can extend the window and be flexible around that. But yes, in most cases it will be the last 5 years of your career.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Tisha. That's great. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the amount of time that the assessment will take. There's obviously a degree of flexibility around this, but let me come to some of the panel on their experience of how long it took from first starting to think about going for the assessment to completing it and getting their outcome. Linda, let me come to you first on that.
Yeah, so in terms of time it took, I probably decided towards the end of October that I definitely wanted to go for it. So then I undertook the online self-assessment and booked my session, which took place mid-November, and I had my output by the end of November. So from start to finish, for me actually dipping a toe in the water, it was maybe 5-6 weeks. In terms of preparation, I suppose one of the things that helped me in my preparation is that I was in the process of moving jobs last year. So I had already prepared my CV. And one of the things I would say to anyone thinking about this is that your CV is a brilliant starting point, because that's where you're already starting to call out some of your key achievements, and you've probably started to put some evidence in terms of, you know, people KPIs that you'd nudged forward. In terms of how long did I actually spend on the preparation, probably over a couple of weeks, maybe about 7 or 8 hours. It actually wasn't that bad, but I think my CV was already in place and that had got me quite a long way. I think it's been mentioned on the call already at the beginning of the call that as HR practitioners, we tend to deprioritize ourselves and our own CPD. One of my learnings is not to let my CV become such a big task to update. So I'm planning to revisit that at least once a year. And that's a really good process to actually go, wow, I achieved that. Look at some of the things that I've landed. So I would say it was very straightforward through the upgrade and assessment, and time spent was time that I could easily afford to purpose on my own professional development.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Linda. And that reflects a lot of what people have been saying through the session, that this kind of serves a broader need in terms of reflecting on the impact you've made and the things that you've learned over the course of doing your job. Christian, let me come to you with the same question, because experience assessment, again, obviously the amount of time that takes to process is different to the upgrade assessments the other panelists have been through. So talk to us beginning to end. How long was that for you?
Sure. So I kind of decided to go in for this over summer, over a chance conversation, right, with another HR professional. I did the entire, so you get 8 weeks to kind of put it all together, right, for your experience assessment, to put all the experiences together. So those 8 weeks, I would say, was a little tough, right? I mean, every day you had to, from your regular work, take out the time just to keep reflecting and trying to, sharpen your experiences. But it was interesting as well, quite enjoyable speaking to people, trying to, get those, things together. So it took me that, and then towards the first week of December, I had the, the actual discussion, right? So it was maybe, 3 to 4 months. 3 months it took me to, kind of do it from, from the moment I thought to getting it registered and then completing my discussion. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Another question about timing then, and this one's more about how did you know that the time was right for you? Ruth, you talked about the gap between your upgrade to Chartered Member and your upgrade to Chartered Fellow being pretty far apart. What was it that made you realise now was the time?
Yeah, good question, Ollie. So I think partly this is, as a consultant, I hadn't thought about it for some time. So I did my qualifications way back when, and got my what was called at the time grad CIPD status. And then within 5 years of getting that, I got my chartered status. And I think then what happens for a lot of us in the profession is you're progressing and developing in your career. Personally speaking, I barely had enough time to do the day job, let alone anything outside of that. So you just get very, very busy. The more experience, the more senior you get. When I stepped out of in-house work and became a consultant, then to begin with, and that's 13 years ago, I was building my business, and getting that up and running. So of course that takes time and effort as well. So it's only really once I'd become more established, and probably, if I'm honest, I took over as chair of the Hertfordshire branch of the CIPD about 18 months ago. So when the offer, which got announced at the annual conference in November, I think, sort of got widely announced then about the upgrade offer, I thought I really must take advantage of that, because I talked to lots of members that come to our events at the CIPD branch in Hertfordshire about the value of membership, about what your local branch can do to support you, about the value of the different grades that you were explaining earlier. So I thought I need to practice what I preach, and show people, as the others have said, actually it's not onerous, it's not too lengthy, it is quite an enjoyable process to go through.
Thanks so much, Ruth. And Pete, we'll have a lot of associates on the call today thinking about whether now is the right time for them to take that step up to Chartered Member. What was the signal for you? What made you realise now's the time?
For me, as I say, it was the stepping back into a HR role, having taken the time outside to focus on developing financial acumen and more business awareness. And I literally had really quite an overwhelming response inside, coming back to the profession, thinking, this is where I belong. This is what I'm here to do. This is my profession. And actually engaging with the community again, the HR community at the CIPD conference, just finding myself in conversations with people where we were speaking the same language was so reassuring at the CIPD conference in November. And that was the final straw, I suppose, alongside, I must say, a very supportive people director who was pushing for me to really re-engage with the profession. Were probably the final steps to go, actually, this is the right time for me. And I'm now at a level of seniority in the profession where this is important and would be useful to me.
Thank you so much. We're going to wrap this up in a couple of minutes. Zoe, can I come to you before we do? Remind people of those promotions and anything else you want to add before we let people go.
Yeah, so a trend that I'm noticing in the chat is there's that kind of questions about, what if they did an old qualification, and can they upgrade or EA use experience assessment? I would encourage anybody with the questions like that to link in using the MEM upgrading email address that we've put in, just so that we can check your qualification history and make sure that we offer you the right thing. And then what we're really hoping that a lot of you after today will do is either book your upgrading assessment, and you would do that by using the pre-assessment tool, the upgrading pre-assessment tool, and on completion of that, it will send you a booking link, or by downloading the pre-assessment for experience assessment. And again, by completing that, it will then send you the relevant registration form. Also, I think we've got a list of everybody who registered on the webinar today, so we'll be able to kind of follow up and make sure that you've got those discount codes. What's been lovely, though, is to see how many people have enjoyed listening to the people who've actually been through it. So Tisha and I can say what we think of it, but actually I think it's really powerful, and really thank those people who've been through it to give their lived experience. I think that's really powerful. So thank you.
Thank you, Zoe, and thank you, everyone. I think we'll wrap it up at this point. If you are at all unsure of which one of these routes might be right for you, we've got all of the information on the website, and of course you can contact our customer services colleagues as well as making use of those pre-assessments. So if you still have questions after today, then there are definitely places you can get those answers. And don't leave them unanswered, because maybe this is the year when you can make that change to your membership grade and your career happen. I want to thank our panel, Krishnan, Pete, Linda, Ruth, for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. We know how valuable it is. It's so helpful to people, I'm sure, to hear your real experiences of going through this, and also to Zoe and Tisha for sharing your expertise around how the process works. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We really do appreciate it. Please do follow up by considering whether this is the year for you to make that upgrade, make that experience assessment happen, get your chartered status.